Good morning to all of you, and let me welcome you all back to one more live session with Neetu's Academy. This is Anne with you, and today, being a Tuesday, we are going forward with our listening Acuity live. So, hope that you're all doing fine. Your practice sessions are going good. It's a festive week, so you all must be busy in a lot of things, right? But then there also are a few of you who are going for the test by the end of this week. I'm sure about that. Many must be going. So hope that you are well prepared with all your 4 modules. Like I always say, if you're going for Ielts test as an actual test, never go unprepared. If you feel you're not confident enough, then wait for some more time. Get yourself prepared enough, and then go for the test, right? And coming to preparation is always a keyword for preparation, or keyword for getting a good band in any of the modules of Ielts is practice, right? And we help you do that practice on a daily basis with different modules, right? So like I mentioned earlier, being a Tuesday, we are going forward with our listening live session, right? So as usual, we go with our listening live, wherein we need a material. So we play the audio first before the audio clips, and we always deal with 10 questions, right? Taking each section at a time. And from a particular test, each Tuesday we take particular 10 questions from a section, solve it, and then we repeat the same procedure. Today also we are going to do the same thing, but then before that, let's just give me one, like when you are like I was telling you about the getting a better band, right? When it comes to listening, every module there are some things which you have to follow. Practice is the main key, but then for listening there are a few things when you listen to the audio, a few things which will help you to get a good band. First thing is familiarize yourself with different kinds of accents, which I always say, because the the audio which is playing in front of you, which cannot be paused and it cannot be replayed, come accented. It is coming various accent, right? So you familiarize yourself with various accents before going to the actual test, right? Secondly, you never lose your focus when you're solving your questions. Focus from the audio, right? Don't lose your focus or lose your concentration when it comes to the audio clip, right? Thirdly, familiarize yourself with different types of questions which are a part of listening. So listening has around like completion kind of questions. We have form completion, we have note completion, we have table completion, maps and plan labeling, right? We have got MCQs, single answers, multiple answers. These are some common kind of questions in the listening module, right? So you need to get an idea how to solve these questions, right? So these are a few things, right? And at the end of the day, practice. Always practice by listening to the audio only once. Never repeat it, never replay it, never pause it. You will get used to that thing, then in actual test will affect you. So you have to play it only once and go forward, right? These are some things just keep in mind when you are practicing with your listening module, right? Okay. So let's go forward with today's live session, and we will listen to first the audio clip, which will be played in a couple of seconds. Listen to it, then the questions are played at the same time in the background. Then we'll come back with solving the question. So the audio clip.
Section 4. You will hear part of a student presentation about the variety of different species that live in the world's oceans. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I've been looking at ocean biodiversity, that's the diversity of species that live in the world's oceans. About 20 years ago, biologists developed the idea of what they called biodiversity hotspots. These are the areas which have the greatest mixture of species. So, one example is Madagascar. These hotspots are significant because they allow us to locate key areas for focusing efforts at conservation. Biologists can identify hotspots on land fairly easily, but until recently, very little was known about species distribution and diversity in the oceans, and no one even knew if hotspots existed there. Then a Canadian biologist called Boris Worm did some research in 2005 on data on ocean species that he got from the fishing industry. Worm located 5 hotspots for large ocean predators, like sharks, and looked at what they had in common. The main thing he'd expected to find was that they had very high concentrations of food, but to his surprise, that was only true for 4 of the hotspots. The remaining hotspot was quite badly off in that regard. But what he did find was that in all cases, the water at the surface of the ocean had relatively high temperatures, even when it was cool at greater depths. So, this seemed to be a factor in supporting a diverse range of these large predators. However, this wasn't enough on its own, because he also found that the water needed to have enough oxygen in it. So these 2 factors seemed necessary to support the high metabolic rate of these large fish. A couple of years later, in 2007, a researcher called Lisa Balance, who was working in California, also started looking for ocean hotspots, but not for fish. What she was interested in was marine mammals, things like seals. And she found 3 places in the oceans which were hotspots, and what these had in common was that these hotspots were all located at boundaries between ocean currents. And this seems to be the sort of place that has lots of the plankton that some of these species feed on. So now people who want to protect the species that are endangered need to get as much information as possible. For example, there's an international project called the Census of Marine Life. They've been surveying oceans all over the world, including the Arctic. One thing they found there, which stunned other researchers, was that there were large numbers of species which live below the ice, sometimes under a layer up to 20 meters thick. Some of these species had never been seen before. They've even found species of octopus living in these conditions. And other scientists working on the same project but researching very different habitats on the ocean floor have found large numbers of species congregating around volcanoes, attracted to them by the warmth and nutrients there. However, biologists still don't know how serious the threat to their survival is for each individual species. So a body called the Global Marine Species Assessment is now creating a list of endangered species on land, so they consider things like the size of the population, how many members of one species there are in a particular place, and then they look at their distribution in geographical terms, although this is quite difficult when you're looking at fish because they're so mobile. And then thirdly, they calculate the rate at which the decline of the species is happening. So far, only 1,500 species have been assessed, but they want to increase this figure to 20,000. For each one they assess, they use the data they collect on that species to produce a map showing its distribution. Ultimately, they will be able to use these to figure out not only where most species are located, but also where they are most threatened. So, finally, what can be done to retain the diversity of species in the world's oceans? Firstly, we need to set up more reserves in our oceans, places where marine species are protected. We have some, but not enough. In addition, to preserve species such as leatherback turtles, which live out in the high seas but have their nesting sites on the American coast, we need to create corridors for migration, so they can get from one area to another safely. As well as this, action needs to be taken to lower the levels of fishing quotas to prevent overfishing of endangered species. And finally, there's the problem of bycatch. This refers to the catching of unwanted fish by fishing boats. They're returned to the sea, but they're often dead or dying. If these commercial fishing boats used equipment which was more selective so that only the fish wanted for consumption were caught, this problem could be overcome. OK, so does anyone have any questions about...
That is the end of section 4.
Okay, so that was the audio, right? On the basis of which we will be discussing 10 questions of how many types we'll see. It's only one type. Now on your screen you can see the questions, right? This has been taken from section 4 from a test. It is the last section. Listening has got 4 sections, section 1, 2 and 3 and 4. So this is taken from the last section, right? We have already discussed the 3 different sections from this test in our previous sessions, right? Now the questions are from 31 to 40. Okay, 10 questions, the last 10 questions. Okay, and the question type is complete the notes below. They come from the completion category, right? That is, all the 10 questions are completing the notes, which is a very common kind of question in listening. Okay, and the instruction says what? Write only one word. Okay, you have to write your answers in only one word. If you go beyond that, you will not get the mark, right? So now note completion is a very common kind of questions, like I told you. Notes is like notes we take from, if you listen to something, if you watch something, you take down some important points and write it down. That is called notes. Similarly here, based on the audio, now the title of the note completion, now notes will always have a title and subtitle. Okay, the title is what? Ocean biodiversity, the whole on which the audio was based on. Then see, you can see some subtitles, like the first one says biodiversity hotspots, the second one says Boris Worm 2005, the third one says Lisa Balance 2007, then census of marine life, and then global marine species assessment, recommendations to retain ocean biodiversity. Okay, ഇതാണ് subtitles. Okay, അത് എല്ലാ നോട്ട് കംപ്ലീഷനിലും അങ്ങനെ ഉണ്ടാവും, title and subtitles. Now why is that? It makes your life easier, because the moment you see the subtitles, biodiversity hotspots, that means you are looking for the 31 answer, which is a note. It is connected to that particular matter which is spoken in that, which is played in that audio. Okay, so it makes it easy for you. So that will be your keywords. These the subtitles which are given to you are your keywords, which you have to always note down. So let's see. There are 10 blanks which we have to complete, and with various subtitles. We'll see. Ocean biodiversity. The first one is biodiversity hotspots. First note is already given. Areas containing many different species, already given. What we have looking for is important for locating targets for. These biodiversity hotspots were important for locating targets for what? That is what we have to look. The third one, at first only identified on land. That is already given. So let's go to the audio script. Now it is a last section. It is a monologue on academic context, right? First 2 sections are general context. Third and fourth section are academic context, and last is a monologue, right? So let's see. It starts with the speaker saying, I have been looking at ocean biodiversity, that's the diversity of species that live in the world's oceans. About 20 years ago, biologists developed the idea of what they call biodiversity hotspots. So now you know the importance of that particular subtitle. The moment you hear that word, you know that your answer is somewhere surrounding to that particular information. That makes you alert, right? These are the areas which have the greatest mixture of species. So one example is Madagascar, right? These hotspots are significant. Significant means they are important. right? Because, why are they important? Because they allow us to locate key areas for focusing efforts at conservation. Now, what is the blank we are looking for? It says is biodiversity hotspots are important, which is synonymous to significant, for locating targets for. So they are important for locating targets for. Now, how do you explain that? The speaker says that biodiversity hotspot, they are actually important in order to locate the areas, right, in which the focus, they say the focusing, that is, right, which is called as somewhere focus when you aim something, when you focus on something, it's your target, right? You aim always your target, right? So what you're focusing efforts at conservation. So this is what it is focused upon, and that is why it becomes important. So your answer for blank 31 is conservation, right? Conservation or conservation, right? So that is your answer here. Okay, fine. So important and target, these are the two keywords which will help you to get your answer. Significant, right? And then focus. Okay, let's go to the second. In that particular subtitle we have only one blank, right? Now let's go to the second one. It says Boris Worm 2005, right? Now this is a person's name, so because it's a very good keyword and a number, right? So wherever that name is mentioned, it becomes easy for you to understand that from there only the information has been taken. How many blanks are there? We have got three blanks there. The first one says he is a person who identified hotspots for large ocean predators, example sharks. So he is responsible for that. Then what did he do? He found the ocean hotspots, right? Then they have given three kind of characteristics about those ocean hotspots. Now before you go to the audio clip, always acquaint yourself with the questions, right? Because it becomes easy for you to get the answers, right? When you understand the questions and get the keywords, it becomes easy for you. So found the ocean hotspots, were not always rich in. First characteristic, they were not. Now not is something you have to note here. They were not rich in something. What was it? Second, they had a higher temperature at the what? Third is also they had, something they had. One is they did not, two they had. Okay, so we are looking for what are the three blanks. Let's go to the audio script about Boris Worm. You can see after that. Okay, biologists can identify hotspots on land, right, fairly easily, but until recently very little was known about species distribution and diversity in the oceans, right? And no one ever knew if the hotspots existed there. So that is actually a distractor. Okay, just kind of an opening for you. Then comes the information about the guy who is Boris Worm. Then a Canadian biologist called Boris Worm. So this is a keyword we are looking for. This guy's information. He found the ocean hotspots. What were they connected to? Did some research in 2005 on data on ocean species that he got from the fishing industry. Worm located 5 hotspots. So that is already given here. You can see he was responsible for locating the hotspots, right? Then they say for large ocean predators like sharks, already given, and looked at what they had in common. So he was studying that. Then what are the characteristics he found out, or the features? The main thing he had expected to find was that they had very high concentrations of food, right? But to his surprise, now here it says they had high concentrations of food. They say they had. But however are two linkers which you should always know that the moment you see this linker, the previous sentence becomes disqualified. That means the next sentence is going to be the correct one, or that is going to be the important one. The moment the linker like but or however comes in your reading as well as your listening, especially in listening, the previous content, because in reading you have got option to go back and read again and again, but in listening you don't have that. Once you listen to that sentence, it's gone, you cannot replay that again. So that's why you should always make sure linkers like but and however, the moment they are uttered in your audio, previous sentence അതിന് മുമ്പ് പറഞ്ഞ information disqualify ആയി പോവാണ്. Okay, so previously he is telling that they had he predicted, he had expected actually, they would have high concentration of food, but to his surprise that was only true for 4 of the hotspots. So he had discovered 5, 4 had the same what he expected, 1 did not. That means there was no high concentration of food. The remaining hotspots was quite badly off in the regard. Okay, now we are going to that blank which says what? Were not always. Now we had underlined the word not, right? Something which is not there. Were not always rich in. Your answer is here food. Out of 5, only 4 were there. 1 was found the ocean hotspots, but not always. That's why always is given, right? It's not always because 4 are there, 1 is not. So it's not rich in food. Okay, next one we are looking for, the ocean hotspots had high temperature at the. It had something, what? High temperature at what? At the. Now yeah, but what he did find, so that was something he did not have, that is already got, right? Food. But what he did find was that in all the cases, this is for all, right? The water at the surface of the ocean had relatively high temperature, right? Even when it was cool at a greater depths. Now we are looking for something had higher temperature at the. So you can see high temperatures, right? Had high temperatures even when it was cool at greater depths, right? So how is the explanation given here is that in these hotspots the deep water could be cool, right? But at the surface the temperature of the water was high when compared with this deeper water, right? So normally as per that he said remaining water at the surface of the ocean was relatively high temperatures even when it was cool at the greater depths, right? So the greater depths it was cool, and the surface it used to be at high temperature. Maybe by deep it must be very cool, but on the surface it had a high temperature. So where it had a high temperature? At the surface. So that is your answer for 33. Fine. In the deep levels it was cool, but on the surface it had high temperature. Third one, that is 34. Third one in that particular, and otherwise 34. Next is also had something, the oceans had, so these hotspots had sufficient dash in the water. There was something in the water, right? So most probably it should be a noun, right? Let's see what it is in the water. So it seemed to be a factor in supporting a diverse range of these large predators. However, this wasn't enough on its own, because he also found that water needed to have enough oxygen in it. Now he also found, this also something he found, right? What? That water needed to have enough oxygen in it. That means it was in the water. What was in the water? Oxygen. Okay, so that was what he found out. Oxygen was there in the water. So that is your answer for 34. That is oxygen. Okay, fine. That completes your second subtitle about Boris worm, right? Next is Lisa. Lisa Balance 2007. One blank which you have to complete, one note is already filled. First one it says she looked for hot spots for marine dash. What for marine? Then what is given is she found these were all located where ocean currents meet. Okay, that is, so she